Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us today for our How to Raise Money to Keep Your Communities Active webinar, along with Sport England. I have just popped a few messages into the chat box. We will have a bit of a slow start to this morning, allowing a few more people to enter the room. Please do use that chat box in the meantime to introduce yourselves, let us know where you're joining us from, maybe a little bit about your organisation or your potential project, or maybe you've got a live project at the moment. You could always drop a link to that one into the chat box. We will make sure that we spend enough time today kind of dipping into that chat box and the Q&A section and make sure that we can answer as many questions as we can about not only crowdfunding, but the wonderful extra funding or match funding opportunity available from Sport England. So today I've been joined by Lucy Gola from Sport England, who's going to talk through the Movement Fund. Hi, Lucy. And also we've got Becky Evans as well, who will be in the chat box. She'll be able to kind of answer your questions as we go. And Becky will be joining us towards the end of the session for the Q&A as well. Okay, let's go through a little bit of housekeeping before we dive into the content. So we have allowed 60 minutes for this session. That does include that time for a Q&A at the end. As I've just mentioned, pop any questions that you would like to ask of us into either the chat box. I can see lots of messages flooding in at the moment, which is great. Alternatively, there is a Q&A box as part of your toolbar, which you should find either at the top or the bottom of your screen. You can pop a question into there. We will be checking both. This session is live. However, we are recording today's session and we will make sure we share that recording with you as part of a follow-up email. That email will also contain all of the links to the resources that we discuss and some helpful next steps for you as well. If you find you have any issues with your internet connection, the best thing to do is to just leave the webinar and then follow that registration link or that email rejoin link, if you like. You should find that directly from Zoom in your email inbox. Just follow that one to jump straight back into the live room. You might find that you've lost any of the information in the chat box up until the point of leaving. Not a problem. Just pop a message in the chat box for us and we can always bring you back up to speed. Okay, if you find that my video and the kind of little panel of videos is sat over a slide, you're struggling to see all of the content, please just head to the view option, which should be at the top right of your screen, and you should be able to select side by side speaker view, and that will remove us from your slides and you'll be able to see them next to one another. Fabulous. Okay, so why would you be considering something like crowdfunding? Ultimately, and I'm sure all of you on the call here are experiencing this in some way, you need to be thinking as organisations, maybe you're a club, maybe you're a kind of registered group, a charity even, about how to best diversify your income streams. Reasons for this are you really want to be in a position where you can build financial stability and reduce that financial risk and enhance that long-term sustainability. We know, as I'm sure you do, that the fundraising landscape as a whole can be quite challenging, especially at the moment. So considering something like crowdfunding as a way to actually raise money towards supporting your organisation or putting out a programme of delivery can be really, really beneficial. It means that you can move away from potentially relying on specific grants that you might receive kind of year in, year out, especially if those are maybe more competitive than they have been in the past, or maybe they actually have ceased to exist in recent years. So it's definitely something that we always recommend to institutions, to clubs and to organisations to factor into their fundraising strategy for all of the reasons that you see on the screen today. It's always really important to think of having different ways to bring in money to your organisations so that you can, as I mentioned, reduce that financial risk and enhance that long-term sustainability as well, and help your organisations, your clubs and your institutions to grow. Now, Crowdfunder UK is a rewards-based crowdfunding platform. And what I mean by that is we give the ability to project owners such as yourselves to offer a benefit of some kind in return for a financial contribution. So that can take many different forms. It could be products or services. It could be merchandise linked to your club or organization. It could be experiences as well. We often see some really interesting and exciting experiences come through on people's project pages by way of rewards. What your supporters will do is they will actually claim one of these rewards from your page. So they will pledge the amount of money that you've listed kind of that reward at. So it's good to have varying price points. And it would be up to you to then deliver on that reward once your project is successful. We'll delve a little bit further into rewards later on in the session, but it can be a really, really great way to boost the amount of money that people are giving to your campaign. It can incentivize their giving. And we've seen with projects that are adding rewards that there's an uplift of around 30% in the amount of money that they're raising, because it really does encourage your supporters to give a little bit more. They're getting something back for their donation. They feel great for having given you the money. You feel wonderful for giving them something back to say thank you. And ultimately, you're raising more. Okay, so how does crowdfunding work then? Well, the first step is to head over to crowdfunder.co.uk and actually sign up for a free to access account. Once you've done that, you'd be prompted to start creating your campaign page. Now, this is your opportunity to really go to town, tell your story, so all about your organisation, and explain your idea. We always recommend that people are viewing that page almost as if it's a shop window into what you do as a club or as an organization. Fill that project page with lots of images, show the personality of your organization, try and kind of create a balance with your messaging between those that know about you, which is going to be existing kind of participants or members, and also those that may have never heard of you, that might be stumbling upon your project page through the great promotion that you've done and actually would love to find out more about, say, the history and the community impact that you're already having as an organisation. You'll be prompted to set a target as well. So think about how much money you need to raise. And it's a good idea to think about the minimum that you need in order to get your idea or your project off the ground. You can always overfund a project, and we'll talk about that again a little bit later. And then how long you need to raise that money. You can go on to add rewards to your page and of course apply for any of the extra funding that you might have been matched with. We'll show you and we'll talk to you about the process when we have a chat with Lucy about the Movement Fund. However, when you are in the draft stages of your page, you can see any of our funding partners that you have been matched with. And at that point, it's a great idea to think about applying for all of the funds that you could have been eligible for. Okay, because you can receive pledges from more than one of our funding partners. And again, that can be a real boost to your campaign. You will then go on to launch your project. So you would set your project live on our website, and then it would be up to you to then promote that with your networks. And there's some great strategies and tips and hints on how to do that effectively. And we have those to share with you today. And of course, we are here to support you all of the way as well. So there's lots of great advice on that on our website too. Now, the main reason, of course, to crowdfunding is going to be to raise the amount of money that you need to make your project or idea happen. One thing that I'd really like you to be thinking about in the planning stages of your campaign, though, is just all of the additional benefits that you might be able to reap from actually running a campaign. First and foremost, it's a great way to build validation in what you're doing. It can be a really low risk way to test the water and see if there is actually an appetite for what you're hoping to achieve. You will soon get that understanding from your community and from your supporters. They will show you that they would like your idea to happen, not only with their donations, but of course their comments of support as well. And they might even be in the local business community able to offer you some rewards to put onto your page. So you'll soon get a real flavour of whether people would like to see this idea happen. That will lead to some great awareness around what you're doing. So launching a project can actually create a real buzz around your potential idea. It can actually help to build awareness around you as an organisation, as a club or as a charity as well, by actually showing the personality of who you are on that project page and highlighting all of the wonderful things that you do. you will find that members of your community just develop a deeper knowledge around who you are and what you're all about. We've noticed, especially within kind of sports clubs or physical activity projects, that some of the comments that people get are things like, oh, we didn't realize you were a charity. We thought, we didn't realize you were kind of self-funding and needed to apply for these grants and crowdfunding this way. We just assumed that you had the ability to kind of be self-sufficient through membership fees, etc., etc. So actually, it's a great way to be transparent and just get that message out there for your community. Now, everybody that is donating to your page will become an advocate. They will start talking about you and the wonderful things that you do. They will also potentially share your project with their networks as well. We're advocates for projects that we resonate with. I know the case officer team at Sport England as well. They're advocates for the projects that they support. So anybody that's engaging with your project can potentially play a part in actually building that advocacy and engaging those wider networks on your behalf. No doubt you'll learn some new skills as well. There are lots of great things that we can teach you and we can support you with. Things like creating those engaging pages, so creating compelling copy and telling your story effectively, all the way through to networking, effective promotion, and those strategies behind promoting effectively. We've got so many resources to help you with all of this. And those skills will be really transferable into different areas of your organisation as well. And of course, that extra funding offer that I've mentioned, and we'll look a bit more deeply into further on in the session. Ultimately, we work with both national and regional partners, and we facilitate the distribution of match funding, we call it extra funding, to eligible projects. So at the moment, there's around £11 million, I believe, of match funding available through the Crowdfunder UK site. So always check to see what you could be eligible for and put in those applications as part of the process of creating that campaign page. Now, why does crowdfunding for sports and physical activity projects work so well? Well, actually, you've got some of the key ingredients to a really successful crowdfunder already at your fingertips. You potentially have a ready-made crowd. So you have people that are already engaging with you as an organisation, whether that's members, volunteers, participants, beneficiaries. You could be working with different local organisations as well to deliver your physical activity projects. So that in essence is already your ready-made crowd. They're going to be a real core audience for you to reach out to. You're not starting from scratch, which is a really, really great position to be in. Those people and yourselves will have a shared passion. So you're all reaching towards a common goal, which is, again, a brilliant place to be when you're kind of getting people excited around what you're doing. No doubt you'll have a team of people you can reach out to, whether that's fellow volunteers, colleagues, friends and family, members, people with that shared passion. We always recommend, if you can, to do this as a team exercise and to have it be collaborative wherever possible. You can do it on your own. It's just always nice to be able to lean on others for some feedback and to delegate some of those tasks as well. We know that sports organisations and physical activity organisations are predominantly really well known within their communities. They're normally a hub of the community. Work with that, make sure you're leaning on all of those different contacts within your network to really push this out and actually build your network organically if you can. You may have capacity to set fundraising challenges, especially if you have a venue that you work from. Can you do a fundraising day? Could you set a specific challenge and actually set people to task to raise money on your behalf? And that could be local schools, partner organisations, people that engage with you day to day. That network I've mentioned, you've got a brilliant network around you. Lean on that for sharing your project, potentially offering you rewards that you can list on your page, and of course, making those donations. You might even have a local celebrity that has not only come through the ranks of your organisation, there could be some alumni associated with your physical activity. Reach out to them and see if they could be an advocate for your project. It's not necessarily kind of the golden I was going to say the silver bullet then. It's not necessarily that thing that's going to push your project over the line in terms of hitting its target. Some people think if we get this celebrity to shout about it, suddenly all of these donations are going to flood in. I wouldn't rely on it, but it definitely is a great step to help you get that message out there. And of course, that community impact that no doubt you're already having. So be sure to highlight that in all aspects of your campaign, on your page, also throughout your promotion. Get some great testimonials if you can from people that you've really had that impact on, a positive impact. That human interest point is always going to be center of a really successful campaign. Okay, let's look at a few numbers then before we speak to Lucy about the Movement Fund. So in terms of looking solely at sports and physical activity projects over recent years, we've worked with more than 7,000 projects that have come through the platform, and they've been supported by over 450,000 supporters. Many of these organisations are grassroots clubs and organisations, so the real heart and soul of communities. So 450,000 individuals have put their hands in their pockets, made those donations to those incredible projects. We've seen more than £11.3 million worth of that extra funding being distributed, and that is solely through our sports partners. So over the years, that would be Sport England, Sport Northern Ireland, Sport Wales, and British Cycling. That does not include any of those additional pledges from local authorities or the national organisations that we work with that aren't necessarily sole sporting specific. And those projects combined have raised more than £39.5 million. And as I mentioned, a lot of that is going back into the heart of communities in grassroots clubs and organisations. So the potential for it to make a huge positive impact for communities is massive. And it's something that we absolutely champion at Crowdfunder and want to make sure that we give you all of the support so that your communities can benefit as well. And one of the great ways that we can do that is by working with partners such as Sport England to facilitate the distribution of funds such as the Movement Fund. And what a wonderful segue. So we've got Lucy here from Sport England, who's going to tell you all about the Movement Fund. I'm going to hand over to Lucy. I'll turn my mic and my camera off. Just give me a nod, Lucy, for driving the slides if you want me to change. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Zoe. Right. Okay. The Sport England Movement Fund. So it's been open since April last year, and organisations, not-for-profit organisations, are able to apply for anything from £300 to up to £15,000 per project. With that, we can look at delivery projects. So it might be that you're looking for a new delivery to a different audience, perhaps one of these priority ones that are showing on the screen. So it could be things like hourly rate venue hire. It could be bringing in a specialist coach to help with that particular group, those kinds of delivery projects. Or, which is different to how our small grants used to work, is that we can support small scale capital projects with up to £15,000. We are trying to prioritise projects that help get inactive people active. So that is the overriding criteria really for the fund. Also within that, we do have the funding priorities as shown on the slide here. So it could be those on low incomes, it could be long-term health conditions, more culturally diverse communities, it could be those who are young carers. The list here is a short list of those that we've identified specifically on our website. However, if you have an audience which doesn't fall into one of those categories, but you can demonstrate why they have a challenge to get physically active, then those would be one that we would support as well. Okay, you just need to give us that understanding of what it is that they need to help get active and what their challenge is. So any application to us will need to show who will benefit, why that project is needed, how will you deliver those benefits, the barriers that your project is aiming to tackle for your local community, consider the sustainability of the project. So what would happen once your 12 months of funding has completed, and also provide a clear budget breakdown and quotes. So those are the sort of the key areas that we would want to see within any application. What we can't fund through this is your core running costs. So your normal day-to-day, your rent, we can't do that. We can't cover your insurance or your utilities. So those general day-to-day costs, unfortunately, we can't cover. Do you want to go to the next slide? Thank you. So we do have a couple of different routes into the Movement Fund. So the first one, if you haven't started a crowdfunding project and you're just interested in coming into the Movement Fund, you've got a potential project that you've got in mind, you're wondering what you want to do next, you can come in directly from the Sport England website. Now, based on that, there could be three results. So it could be that you receive a grant from us up to 15,000. It could be that you receive a pledge towards your crowdfunding campaign, and that would be a condition. So you then would need to create a crowdfunding campaign for us to work with you. Or it might be that your project is not quite what we're able to fund at the moment. And in that instance, we would provide you with some bespoke feedback and encourage you to reapply, perhaps provide some additional information, and we can support you with that as well. Now, what may be relevant for some of the people that are here today in terms of if you've already got a crowdfunding campaign that's in draft, perhaps you're on the early stages of the journey, perhaps you've already come into us from Movement Fund, is if you've already got a page, already got a draft page up and running, or it could be live. We can always work with you to extend if we need to. But the idea is that the Movement Fund is classified as one of the extra funders. So alongside people like Aviva, British Gas is on there at the moment, Salford Council has been on there in the past. There's been quite a few down in Devon and Cornwall Police as well. Those are all organisations that if they like your crowdfunding campaign and your application, they could apply a pledge to you. So when you're in that draft campaign, depending on what you've selected, so you might have selected sport and physical activity, welfare, different mental health, you could have selected some things like that. That will flag up the extra funder that you've been matched with, and we are one of those. Now, when you go through to that, there will be an application form that you will need to complete to us that covers those areas that I mentioned earlier on. So talking about the benefits, how you know it's needed, the barriers that the project will tackle. So that will go alongside your crowdfunding campaign when it comes through to us for us to assess. So you will still receive an assessment. It won't just be oh, brilliant, we love this, off we go. We will review it, see if we want to fund, and then go forwards from there. So please make sure you read the full guidance on criteria beforehand. We do need to ensure that the physical activity is at the heart of the project as well, and particularly where you feel that your project is going to be supporting those who are inactive to become active. And this is just an example of the screen that you might see when you're in your draft campaign. So under extra fund, if you can see there, it says who's likely to benefit from your project. You can see it talks about children, older people, young people, parents, carers. There is another section as well at the same time, which talks about what areas of interest is this project related to. So it could be the environment, it could be, like I said, sport or physical activity. And down the right-hand side, it will also trigger to you and say, find out more, and then you'll be able to make that application through to the Movement Fund.
Thank you, Lucy. Would you like me to do the milestone section and let people know how it triggers their actual pledge? That was some really great information about the fund itself.
Yeah, go for that.
One thing I will say as well, if people do have any specific questions about their eligibility for their projects, you can always contact the Movement Fund team directly, and we will make sure we share that email with you, not only in today's session, but in that follow-up email as well. And Lucy's going to be joining us for the Q&A at the end of the session, so please get thinking about those questions. I know we've had a few coming into the chat box, which is great, and Becky's in there as well answering those as we go, but we will probably recap some of those towards the end because some of them are great and actually would be beneficial for everybody here. So in terms of how that funding works then, Let's go on the basis that you've applied for the movement fund whilst your campaign was in draft mode. So you've not gone live with it yet. Okay. You've applied for the movement fund. You've been fortunate enough to be approved for that. And now you are all set, ready to go live with your project. You are going to use the fact that you've been approved for this extra funding through the movement fund as part of your messaging. Okay. You want your supporters to understand what milestones and what goals you're working towards in order to not only unlock that pledge, but secure it as well. So the first milestone that you'll be looking to achieve is to raise 25% of your initial target. And remember, you set your target. You're in full control of how much money you need to raise. Your milestone is 25% of that target, and you need to raise that amount from at least 25 unique supporters. What we mean by that is an individual that's donating to your campaign and their first donation. It's wonderful when supporters like to donate to your campaign more than once, and that is brilliant, and we definitely encourage that. However, when it comes to extra funding, it's only ever their first donation that is applicable when it comes to releasing the movement fund pledge. Okay, so you've hit that first milestone. You will then see a pledge from Sport England land on your project page. All of a sudden, your progress bar will leap up by that pledge amount towards your target, and there'll be a nice banner that lands on your page to say that Sport England have supported you with X amount of money. You want to then use that as motivation to go back out to your crowd and encourage them to donate to your project so that you can hit 100% of your target. You do need to raise 100% of your initial target in order to secure the pledge from Sport England. At that point, if you still have some time left on your campaign, you can absolutely keep raising money. This is where we talk about overfunding your project. You can set, if you like, an additional target for your supporters to focus on. We call it a stretch target. Ultimately, it's overfunding from your target. You know, you might decide that we've raised the minimum that we need to get this idea off the ground. However, if we just raised a little bit more, we could make this project so much bigger. You know, we could cover the marketing of what we need to do in order to get the message out. We might want to be able to deliver the project for a few more months, you know, increase our participation numbers. So think about those additional things that you could add on as part of your stretch target. How do you connect with your crowd then? So how do you go out to people and get them donating to your crowdfunding campaign? Understanding this part of the process is, I would say, along with your kind of engaging storytelling, this is the key to a successful campaign. The best thing to do is to break up your audience or your crowd into smaller sections. When you think about your crowd as a whole, it can be quite overwhelming. It can be quite hard to know where to start in terms of where do you focus on your promotion. And also, if you are just sending out blanket messaging to everybody in your contacts list, everybody on social media that you can connect with, it won't necessarily yield the best results. The key to this is understanding who your audience are and communicating that with them in a way that resonates with them best. So the way you do that is you segment your audience. Split it into smaller chunks, such as your close friends and family, maybe local businesses, existing supporters, that could be members, customers, for example. Think about those that are around you in terms of educational venues, so schools, colleges, different organisations within a similar sector. All of those form their own little kind of subgroups within your community. Now, each one of those groups will benefit from some personalized communication wherever possible. So how will you contact each of those groups? You might pick up the phone to speak to friends and family. You might include existing supporters in a newsletter. When it comes to local businesses, you might go in and have a face-to-face chat with the manager or owner. That is the best way to actually engage with people and showcase that personality, as we've mentioned, and get them resonating with your message. And your message does matter. So your story does matter. So with each of these groups, think about what is it about your campaign? What is it about your organization and your ideas which is going to resonate best with them? For friends and family, it could be that actually they want to get behind you as individuals. For your existing members or participants, it may be the benefit to them from this project happening. For local businesses, it might be the potential for them to offer a reward, and so you will potentially market their wonderful business as part of your promotion, that mutually beneficial kind of relationship that you're going to develop with them. They give you a reward, you talk about how wonderful they are, you potentially gain access, if you like, to their customer base, and you in turn are potentially increasing their customer base by sharing how great they are with your networks. So the whole community benefits from what you're doing. Always keep your supporters in the loop as well. So post regular updates, not only to your campaign page, but also, of course, on social media and any of those channels that you're using. And always check back to your network map to make sure that you're actually connecting with those and it's working. You know, if something hasn't landed well, think about how you change that messaging up so you can reconnect with that group. The best way to be doing that is to actually have a kind of strategy, so a bit of a plan for how you're going to reach out to these groups. It can be really useful to have something like a spreadsheet. I know it's not everybody's cup of tea. You might find you want something a little bit more visual, but keeping some kind of track or record as to how you're promoting and what's working is going to take all of the guesswork out of it. And this can be done in the planning stages, and you can refer back to it throughout the whole live campaign. So here, this is just a really simple version. So you've got your potential audience. So let's take the primary school is a potential audience. So the method of which you might communicate with those, it could be word of mouth. You can go in and have a conversation. It might be that actually you've got children that go to that local primary school. You can have those conversations at the school gates. It might be that you host an event where you send some coaches in and they do spend a bit of time with the children talking about the sport and the wonderful impact that you have as an organisation. You could see if you can get a message out into the PTA WhatsApp group. Maybe they could do some fundraising on your behalf as well, a non-uniform day or something similar, with the proceeds going towards your campaign. It might be that the status of that is actually you've gone and spoken to the head teacher and the head of the PTA, and you are going to be actually arranging that fundraising day for the pupils. Maybe you're going to be going in the summer term, doing a little bit of activity on the school field with those kids, and everyone's going to bring in 50p to take part. You know, that soon will build up to a nice chunk of money to put onto your campaign. So you can look back and make sure that you can keep track of what you're doing, what's worked, what hasn't, do you need to change tack? The more you can put into the planning, essentially, the easier it's going to be to kind of ride that wave of a live campaign and make sure you're being reactive throughout it all and keeping up that momentum. Now, Lucy mentioned as well those other funds that we have available. It's worth checking on the website all of our current live funds to see what you could potentially be eligible for, and our system will match you with any of the funds that we think could be a good match for your project too, based on where you are, your structure, and what you're raising money for. I've mentioned networking and telling your story as two of those really key points to a successful campaign. When it comes to telling your story, there's a really brilliant kind of, I hate the word hack, but I'm going to say hack, for physical activity projects, is that we've created a template. So actually, when you start putting your campaign together and you get to the telling your story section, so your project page section, there's already a template there for you to follow. We highly recommend that you change these headings of the sections to something a little bit more personal to you, but do use them as a prompt. The best pages visually are the ones that have clear headings, a nice kind of paragraph or two of text underneath that, and then a great image to help demonstrate what they're talking about. If you can repeat that pattern throughout the page, it's going to help to draw the reader's eye through all of your information. I really struggle as somebody that sees a lot of these pages when I just have a huge amount of text to kind of get through. And I think we all live in a world at the moment where everyone's short on time. Everybody wants that information yesterday. So if you can make your page kind of concise and succinct and get that message across in bite-sized chunks, that's really going to help your potential readers and supporters. A great way to do that is to add a video if you can, just a minute up to a minute and a half. It doesn't have to be highly scripted. It doesn't have to be professionally shot or edited. You can capture it on a phone and use some kind of free software to be able to just kind of trim that and edit it if you so wish. Just outlining who you are, what you're doing, why you're raising money, and how people can help you. So please share our page, please donate, please offer a reward, please fundraise for us. Those key messages and calls to action. Going back to rewards then, this kind of data was taken from our Active Together Fund. We worked with Sport England to deliver the Active Together Fund. This was before the Movement Fund, which was highly successful, as is the Movement Fund at the moment. And what we saw through those projects that were coming through as part of the Active Together Fund is that actually rewards do make a really big difference to the amount of money that people are giving to pages and to projects. So those projects that had between kind of 0 to 5 rewards, on average, they had around 106 supporters for those projects. And the average crowd pledge, so people actually donating and making pledges to that page, was just over £50. For those projects that really went to town and added really exciting variety of different rewards at varying price points, we saw that actually they amassed more than 150 supporters on average, and those average crowd pledges were just over £90. So it can be a really great way to almost double the amount of money that people are actually giving when they donate to your page or pledge on your page. And rewards can take a whole manner of different what's the word I'm looking for there? A whole manner of different kind of shapes and forms. So think about things that are maybe a money wouldn't buy experience, something that you have capacity to offer that you wouldn't do in your day to day. It could be an experience. It could be some merchandise, for example. It could be sponsorship. So reaching out to your local business network and offering them discounted sponsorship for the next year to be able to have, you know, something up around the pitch or in the clubhouse, for example, or even a certain element of your project delivery. Also think about necessities. So what is it that people are needing to spend money on? And that could be things like self-assessments, MOTs, accounting support and advice, tutoring. We see that come up often, especially around kind of this time of year. When you've got different exams going on, you might have teachers or people who have the skills and experience that could offer a bit of online tutoring to help people at this time of year. So think about people that have existing businesses, people that have got skill sets, people that have time and the capacity to volunteer and actually donate some of these rewards. In terms of people fundraising on your behalf, you can opt to be what we call a multiplier project. What that does is enables people to actually fundraise on your behalf. There will be a prompt on your page, a button that people can select, which is become a fundraiser, and then they will go on to set up their own little child projects, we call it. So all of the child projects are linked directly to your page. If I was to become a fundraiser on behalf of your project, I would be able to add images and a little bit of text all about what I was doing, the fundraising challenge I was undertaking. If you would like to, you can also share your rewards with any of your child projects. So my network can now have access to those wonderful rewards that you've got on your main page. I don't need to enter any of my financial details. Everything that I raise is going to be funneled directly onto your page, and all of my supporter numbers become your supporter numbers. So it's a great way to kind of mobilize your community and give them some ownership for actually helping you in that collaborative way to raise money and hit those key milestones too. A great example of this is the Brighton Surf Lifesaving Club, who were one of the first projects that came through the Movement Fund back in April time last year. And they had three different fundraisers, all doing kind of similar challenges at different lengths, but actually between them, they raised a really nice amount of money towards that project. So do think about your capacity to either have a fundraising challenge that you set, or maybe facilitate a day. You could be pitting teams against each other, for example, and fundraising in that way. Here are our top 5 tips for getting started with crowdfunding. Probably the most important is to start strong. Have an idea of where your first kind of 10% of your target is coming from. Those first 48 hours of launching a campaign can be crucial. It really helps to set the pace for the rest of your campaign. A great way to kind of make sure that that is impactful is to secure some pledges from friends and family in your core network ahead of going live. And what I mean by that is have some promises of pledges for the moment that you actually set your project live. Maybe don't shout about it to the wider network just yet. Maybe go live, go back to that core group that you've already had a conversation with, and get them to put those donations onto your page as soon as it's live, maybe within the first kind of morning or first day. Then at that point, so the kind of following day, do more of a public launch. That way, anybody that's looking at your page can see that it's already got support. It's already credible. It's on its route to success. They're not going to be the first ones to donate, which is really encouraging. Raised on it at all. It really doesn't give people confidence in the campaign. So do get some of those pledges on before you then start with a more public facing promotion. Set realistic goals as well. So the more realistic you are with your targets and with your kind of milestones that you might want to be aiming for each day and each week, it's going to be easier to achieve. You always have that ability to overfund, as I've mentioned. And in terms of your supporters, again, it gives them confidence that actually their money is going to help you to hit that target. And that's really important. Telling your story effectively is key. It helps to build connection and trust with your supporters, and of course spikes their interest in what it is that you're actually doing, and maybe in your organization itself. Always be authentic. So do show your personality at every stage and in every aspect of your campaign. Supporters, potential supporters, will resonate with you as personalities, as people, as much as they will do with your potential project idea. So be transparent. If you can, put a breakdown of how their money will be spent on your page. Be open and honest as to why it is that you're needing to raise this money. Keep it real, and that's the best way to actually connect with people at that level. And stay connected. So make sure you keep your supporters in the loop through kind of warming them up in terms of doing some warm-up promotion. Then also when your campaign is live, make sure you're posting updates, letting them know what's going on with the campaign, but also just with kind of club and organization life. Has anything exciting been going on outside of the campaign? They want to know about that as well. And even after the campaign's closed, you can still post those updates to your page to let them know how you're getting on. Has the project come to fruition? Pop some photos on there so they can see where their money's actually gone, and how well you're doing, having raised the money that you needed. There's a huge amount of support available to all of you to help you do this effectively. We've got webinars such as this. We've got Ask the Expert sessions where you can come along and ask us anything. And we often feature one of our key experts as well from different areas of the crowdfunding team. We sometimes bring project owners into that, so you can really pick their brains about their experiences too. There's some brilliant advice and support available for you to access on our website in your own time too. So do make sure you engage with all of that. We are all here, Sport England included, to help you to raise the money that you need. Okay, well, hopefully that's given you some food for thought. I'd like to invite Lucy and Becky onto the screen, please, and we can have a look at some of those questions that have been coming through. Hi, both of you. Thank you for joining me. I might take a moment just to delve back into the chat because I know it's definitely moved on throughout those slides I was doing. Becky, you've been in there while I've been talking. Is there anything that you would like to bring to the Q&A that we can just go over?
Yeah. So lots of really good questions today. So I just would like to pick up the one that Hajaz popped in the chat because I'm typing away and actually it'd probably be a little bit quicker just to answer it directly. So Hajaz asked, netball facilities is quite a struggle in their area, finding ones that are decent and cost effective. As a netball player, I could completely relate, Hijra. So potentially you could apply to the movement fund. Just be mindful that there's only 15,000 available. And before applying to the fund, we really need to understand that everything's in place for that project. So it's just kind of we're the last part on the to-do list. So apply for funding. So you understand what the costs are, you've secured your facility, and you've got all the relevant planning in place. So you just need that investment. And as soon as your investment's there, you can get started. So having all of that in place before applying to us is quite important. But potentially that project would be eligible, but there's only 15,000 available, and you need to make sure that you have everything else in place before applying. So hopefully that answers your question. Yeah, there was also one I'd picked up from Peter. So Peter is a cricket and a football club, and they have £100,000 project they're looking to undertake. So similar advice, really. We've only got 15,000 available. So you'd also need to secure funding potentially from the club themselves or other funders. However, it is something that you could crowdfund for. Just be mindful that we will provide 50% of your target up to 15,000. So again, you need to have everything in place, understand where the other funding is coming from. For football facilities, if the project is covered by the Football Foundation, then we're unable to support it through the Movement Fund. That's because we work with and fund the Football Foundation directly.
Amazing, thank you, Becky. And I guess just to add to that from a crowdfunding standpoint, something that we often see, and I should have mentioned then actually, is we often see that people run a potential crowdfunding campaign in order to actually leverage funding from elsewhere, because it's a really great way to actually showcase that you've got community support. So you could run your crowdfunding campaign, as Becky mentioned there, as part of potentially a much bigger project, understanding that potentially £15,000 might come from Sport England, which would be amazing, but then also maybe thinking, okay, how do we then also leverage our crowdfunder with potential partners elsewhere? It's a brilliant way to kind of say, well, look, the community have got behind us by them giving us £15,000. Sport England are getting behind us by giving us £15,000. Ultimately, as Becky said, though, for Sport England, they would need to know that the project's going to happen, I guess, wouldn't you? So you'd need to know that they've definitely got some kind of route to funding to make the overall project happen. If you were not eligible for Sport England, let's just say in this scenario, you could still use that model. You could still crowdfund, raise a smaller amount of money, and then maybe say, use that to leverage other funds, whether that's local authority money, whether that's different funds that exist around you and within your sector. Okay. Do projects or organisations need to be a cask in order to be eligible to apply for the funding? Got shakings of heads.
No, it's just simply if you are set up as a not-for-profit, so you can be set up as a volunteer-led sports club. You could be a cask, community. I can't remember what it stands for now off the top of my head. You could be a CIC, you could be a charity, you could be a number of different types of not-for-profit. The difference with being a cask or a charity is that means that you could also claim gift aid on the donations that are on there. That is the prerequisite for claiming gift aid on your campaign.
Okay, fabulous. In terms of timings, then, we haven't actually had a question about it, but I always think it's quite nice to just cover off timings. Is there anything that people need to be mindful of in terms of them planning a campaign? So maybe Do they need to allow a certain amount of time for a decision from Sport England? Do they need to run a campaign for a set amount of time or within a set amount of time, just so people can factor it into their planning?
Yeah, so it's currently taking about 6 weeks to assess a application. This includes applying either via either route that Lucy went through. So whether that's through the crowdfunder site or applying to us directly via the application portal. It's currently taking 6 weeks. And then obviously you've got to factor in the time it's going to take to plan and effectively deliver your campaign. So potentially you've already started planning or you're already delivering. So once your campaign is complete, you can draw down the funds from your crowdfunded campaigns, and then we will pay our funding directly into your bank account a week to 2 weeks after the completion of the campaign. So in terms of timing, if you haven't applied and you're looking to apply, please allow that 6 weeks to 6 weeks assessment, and then obviously the time it's going to take you to effectively plan the campaign, which is obviously dependent on the time that you have available and your club and the amount of people that are helping you. And so in terms of our deadline, if you're awarded from us, you have a month to accept. You have 3 months to start your campaign, and we would ideally like you to complete your campaign within 10 weeks. But we do advise that actually your campaign time is shorter. So optimum campaign time is 4 to 6 weeks. This is just to keep the crowd engaged. So a lot of information there. Let me just quickly recap. A month to accept, and you've got 3 months to put together your campaign and 10 weeks to complete the campaign.
Brilliant. Thank you, Becky. And all of that is kind of recapped, isn't it? When people start kind of engaging with you and putting their applications in terms of any kind of communication from Sport England, all of that is reiterated in that. So you'll have all of the different, milestones, goals, all of those things in hand in your inbox to make sure that you can accept in time, run your campaign in enough time, all of those wonderful things. Becky mentioned there kind of a shorter campaign can be really effective, and what we often find is that people get super excited because you've done your warming up of your crowd and you've gone live with your project and it's got a bit of money on it and they want to get behind you when you launch, and then it is quite natural for there to be a bit of a dip in engagement and a dip in donations kind of in the middle of your campaign, and then it does tend to ramp back up again when you get towards your deadline because people sense that urgency, and you're doing a great job at promoting the fact that you've got a bit of urgency to hit your deadline. So having a super lengthy campaign just means that you need to be more mindful of keeping up that momentum to kind of mitigate that dip. It's a lot easier to do if it's a little bit of a shorter campaign. Ultimately, it's what works for you, kind of on an individual level, what fits with your calendar as an organization. You might have some great events coming up that you want to actually incorporate into your fundraising. If you've got some in-person things happening, that's really nice to be able to use that as a bit of a way to fundraise as well. So again, planning it and factoring it into your fundraising, not only your fundraising strategy, but actually your calendar of what you've got going on as an organization and how you can best connect with your audience, I think is really important as well. Okay, have we got any more questions coming through?
I can see one from Joe regarding gift aid and awards. I would recommend looking at the HMRC website when it comes to that. With gift aid, you can, as long as the person is not receiving something in return that's worth more than a certain percentage, it gets a bit complicated. So depending on what the award is, I would recommend perhaps leaving the gift aid off those ones, but having gift aid for any of your regular pledges. There'll be a lot of people that will want to make a pledge that won't want to claim a reward necessarily. The system is really handy in the dashboard, there's a reporting function. So anyone who has ticked gift aid, you can download that list. So when it comes to making that claim with HMRC, there's a ready available downloadable list. So whether you do that quarterly, every 6 months, or every year, that is there for you. So it's all kind of done and dusted for you, which is really, really helpful.
Amazing.
That makes sense.
Sorry, Lucy, I just talking there. I just noticed one asking if there is a limited number of projects that you can register on Crowdfunder. No, ultimately, you can be a serial crowdfunder. We absolutely encourage you to do so. We would love to see organisations actually factor in a campaign as part of their strategy across maybe a 12-month period. We've seen lots of different sports projects, physical activity projects come back year in, year out to actually raise money for different things. The best thing to be thinking about is trying not to run multiple projects at the same time, because you will potentially dilute your audience and you'll be sending them in different directions. So if you've got a bigger project, let's say, and it might take a bit of time to raise that money, can you break it down into phases? Can you think about different elements that you could have as part of kind of consecutive campaigns? In terms of the movement fund, are there limitations on how many times they might be able to apply for projects if they've been successful, let's say?
They can only receive a maximum of 15,000 within a 12-month period. So it does depend on a project by project basis. So in some instances, we can support a continuation of a project if you're coming in for that second year. However, we want to understand more about what you've learned. Has it expanded? How is it different to the original incarnation? So it can't just come in exactly like for like, and we'll just keep funding exactly the same thing. We want to understand how it's worked, how it's evolved. Have you evaluated how it's run effectively and where it's heading next?
Amazing, thank you. I think, have we got time for one more question, Becky? Has anything come through?
Yeah, I'd just like to, Sarah's put her question in a couple of times, and her question was, can we support the running costs of an organisation? It's a really good question, Sarah. I'm glad you've asked it. Unfortunately, through the Movement Fund, we can't support the running costs of an organisation. So any costs that you're responsible for to keep the ongoing running of the club or organisation is not something that we can cover. Anything that's additional for that project, then we can cover that. But if it's something that you do on a regular basis, it's not something that we would be able to support.
Amazing, thank you. I'm just sharing our final slide, which is our contact details. So do make sure that you connect with us. You can always reach out to Becky, Lucy, the other members of the team at Sport England if you've got any specific eligibility questions. If you would like to connect with us at Crowdfunder, you've got, again, specific questions about actually, curating, running a campaign, please do reach out to our support team and they can triage your inquiry and send it to the right member of our team. And then keeping up to date with us generally, so following Sport England, Crowdfunder on obviously all of our social channels, and coming along to any of our future events as well. We are all here to support you. We want to see you raise the money that you need in order to get these ideas happening. So thank you so much for spending your lunchtime with us today. Thank you to Becky, thank you to Lucy for joining me as well, and we wish you all of the best of luck with your fundraising journeys. We hope to see you all live on the platform, approved for the Movement Fund and raising that money that you need to get your projects happening. Thank you so much.